Hi, Amy Rose.
Hi, Lisa.
So, this is our first episode of the Academic Publishing Podcast, and I wanted us to just introduce ourselves and talk a little bit about who we are and the idea behind this podcast. So, Amy Rose, could you introduce yourself?
So, my name is Amy Rose McHugh Gill. I have a PhD in interdisciplinary Italian studies from the University of California at Berkeley. And with Textformations, I am a line editor. I do some translation, and I also manage our copy editing projects. That's a little brief intro about me. How about you, Lisa? Tell us about you.
So, my name is Lisa Regan. I also have a PhD from UC Berkeley. Mine is in art history with a specialization in early modern Italian. And for Textformations, which you and I co founded, spoiler alert there, I am a developmental editor. So I work with text at the level of structure and content.
So, as you mentioned, we know each other from quite a long time ago, actually. I don't want to say how long at Berkeley, where we were colleagues and then friends. And Textformations evolved out of that relationship. So,
Indeed.
you, Lisa, were doing a bunch of editing for a variety of different people. And I was wondering what that work was like and starting to do some of it myself. And at a certain point, we realized that we had really complementary skill sets. And we, I think it's fair to say, have a long-standing debate as to whose idea it was to begin text
That
formation,
is true. That is a true story. Yes.
right?
Yes. We both claim authorship of the idea.
That's right. So it's never been resolved, perhaps never to be resolved. And yet the partnership works very well with our goal of trying to help authors navigate this complicated thing that we call academic publishing. Do you want to say
Yes.
a little bit about that process and how we thought we could help?
Yeah, absolutely. What I remember is that you and I were talking a lot when we were both started doing editorial work. And we were meeting once a month and talking about how to navigate questions that came up because we really didn't know anybody else that did this kind of work. I mean, this was at a time when that was not something that people did out of graduate school. And so we sort of relied on one another to find our way. But as part of finding our way, we talked a lot about the differences in the kinds of work that we did and the different ways that we were handling it while having a pretty shared ethos about wanting to do it very well. And one thing that we noticed was that there really was not at that time any way for someone to navigate the entire publishing process from beginning to end. And so between us, the work that you were doing and the work that I was doing and the ways that we were kind of focusing our skill sets, we were actually capable of taking all of that on if we teamed up. And so by combining our strengths, we were able to help someone for the entire publishing process from conceiving of the idea for a publication all the way through to holding that publication in their hands and having that be as good of a process as it could be for that entire kind of span. Is that also your sense of things?
Yeah. That's pretty much my memory of how we started thinking about things as well. And I think as scholars ourselves and as authors ourselves, we were
Mm.
realizing what it was like to try to jump into this whole process of trying to get an article initially or a book published was really, it was challenging. It had so many different steps. One didn't know where to turn. Like, how do you find an indexer? How do you
Mhm.
figure out what line editing is? Do you even need that? And so one of the things that we really were thinking about, I think, a lot was what does author support look like? And how could we
Mhm.
really help authors do the things that they need to do in order to advance their careers, get their research into places that they were happy having it. And then also this sort of brought us to the idea of like how can we share some of the information that we've gleaned over the years in doing this process? And your fantastic idea was maybe there was a way of doing a podcast. So tell us a little bit about how you came to that idea and about the podcast itself.
Right. So I think it's exactly what you just said, right? Is this idea that like so much about academic publishing is actually so opaque and people's understanding of what to do is kind of like siloed within their individual experience. So everyone is constantly talking about everything in terms of just like personal anecdote. It's like, well, when I did this, this is what happened. Well, when I did this is what happened. And that for any individual scholar is a pretty small sample size, right? Because it's like, I mean, people, as much as they publish, it really is not in the kind of aggregate, like an enormous breadth of places that they deal with and people that they deal with. And so we see so much of that, right? We talk to lots of people and we tell them one-on-one, individually, what we know and have heard from other people, anonymized, of course, to try to help. But, you know, we've talked about this so many times, like how can we try to make that knowledge shared more widely. So that was one motivation. But the other motivation was for exactly the same reasons. Like, I want to know more about how things work. I want to have a bigger sample size of information from more people, talk to more editors, talk to more people at different presses to get more information about what's going on and how they're thinking about things so that my information and understanding of what's at stake and what's going on is not similarly like siloed to just the 40 people or 100 people that I've talked to, but is as wide as it can possibly be.
Right. And those silos actually, they're disciplinary, right?
Mm,
They're also generational because
mhm,
the publishing industry is changing so quickly right now
mhm,
that even a couple of years can make a difference. And then
totally.
press by press, everyone
Mhm.
does things so differently, whether the press is in the UK or in Europe or in Asia or in Canada or the United States. Like there are all these different kinds of models for how to do things. And it's hard to bring those together in a way that's coherent and cohesive for people who are having, like you say, all of this individual experience.
Totally. Yeah. And then you have all of the journals, right? And at the journals also, like you have, the editors change and what's happening there changes. And so I think that the idea was to share information, but also to get information. And that's why my sense of what I wanted to do, at least initially with the podcast, was I wanted to talk to people. I just wanted to interview people and ask them how they do things, how they think about things. And so that was the sort of starting premise. Rather than listening to me tell you what I do, I want to hear other people, what they do and how they think about things. But then also, some of those conversations I want to be kind of general. So the first conversation that we're going to have is with Michelle Comey, who's at Princeton University Press in art history, acquisition, art history, and architecture and urban planning. And she is going to talk about her entire process from looking at a proposal for it, having a conversation with an author, to the book being in press. So I want to talk to her, and that's a pretty wide-ranging conversation. But I also wanted to ask some people about specific things because either it's something that they think about a lot or something where they, I think, have some very particular insight into it. So, like, I'm also going to talk to Ken Wissaker at Duke University Press, where Ken is someone that you might think of as someone you would talk to about, like, dissertation to book or, like, kind of writing questions, because he talks about that a lot with people, and he's done a bunch of, kind of like web appearances around that. And he's great. He has so much to say about that, and he's wonderful. But he also talks a lot and thinks a lot about the finances of academic publishing and how they have worked in the past, how they are changing now. And I really wanted to hear about that because I find the finances of the whole thing to be very opaque and just kind of inscrutable. And so I had a really interesting conversation with Ken that taught me a lot about how things came to be the way that they are and, like, what he sees changing. So that was really interesting.
Can I just interrupt and ask, like, I mean, do finances have anything to do with, like, author experience? Like, when I think finance, I think, "Oh my goodness, it's so high up the chain, like, how does that even affect anything?"
I never have understood, like, okay, well, there's this subvention you have to pay, but, like, what is that? What is it doing? What's it for? How does it get calculated? Why does it even exist? And then
Right, yeah,
also, like, how does the list price of your book even get decided? Is that just some random number plucked out of the air? And how do the finances of a press work?
right,
So all of that,
okay.
I think, yeah, was really helpful. And I talked to Stephanie Porras about book reviews because she was reviews editor at the Art Bulletin, which is the major art history journal, for several years, and commissioned a lot of reviews. And she teaches graduate students how to write reviews. And so many people, a book review is their first publication. And it's a pretty fraught publication. Everyone acts like, oh, just go write one that's super easy. And it's like, well, no, odds are you're going to be reviewing somebody who may take umbrage at what you have to say. So, people have to kind of approach those pretty carefully and thoughtfully, but no one tells you how. So I wanted to talk to Stephanie about that. So I think the range of conversations is going to cover, like, micro, macro, everything in between. And I have in mind people that I want to talk to, but I definitely want people's suggestions for who they think would be good people to talk to. So my email is open, and I'm eager to hear people's thoughts.
Yeah, it would be great to find out who everyone would like to hear from.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole idea of all of this, like going back to, where we started, is community. Like, we are all in this bizarre academic endeavor together, like, cooking in this pot together. And so how do you try to make that a higher information environment so that everybody can just, like, have a better experience, get their work out in the ways that they want it to get out, having people better understand what the processes are. It seems like it would be, like, in the interest of the entire community.
I think so. It sounds great, Lisa.
So, Amy Rose, my question is, will you be willing to come back from time to time and talk to me about how it's all going?
I would be happy to do that. I can't wait to hear what you're learning, and I look forward to the next time we have a chance to chat.
Excellent. So, as I said, we're eager to hear your thoughts on the podcast. The email address for this podcast is podcast@textformations.com. You can learn more about me and Amy Rose at our website, textformations.com. And we look forward to hearing from you.